This is a framework that looks past performance and intent and instead focuses on the one thing that really, truly matters: consequence. Everything we're about to discuss really boils down to this one quote. It's a total flip of the script. Instead of building these incredibly powerful systems and then, waiting to see what might go wrong, this framework demands that we work backwards. We start by identifying the absolute worst case scenarios, the things that must never happen, and then we engineer the system from the ground up specifically to prevent them. It's a huge shift from just being curious to acting with integrity. And look, this isn't just some academic thought experiment. This new way of thinking was born out of pure necessity. It's a direct answer to the very real, very critical failures that leaders and developers are struggling with right now. It gives us a concrete solution to problems that have, frankly, seemed almost impossible to solve until now. So what is the core problem we're trying to solve here? Well, at its heart, it's a culture of what you could call consequence denial. It's this dangerous idea that we can just launch things into the world and figure out the fallout later. Let's dig into what that actually looks like. This table just lays it out perfectly. The playbook takes the industry's favorite excuses for, moving fast and breaking things, and it just dismantles them. It makes the case that just deploying something without a moral anchor isn't progress, it's actually decay. That security isn't about speed, it's about seeing the truth. Otherwise, it's just sabotage. And the big one, if you think you're going to just bolt on high standards after you've already launched, you've already lost. It's too late. And these right here are the symptoms of that consequence denial. You see it everywhere. Companies dodging liability by playing hot potato, pointing fingers down the development chain. We see ethics treated like a PR cleanup job instead of a core design principle. And there's this huge, gaping chasm between what we say we want philosophically and what our policies actually enforce. These are the exact risks this new playbook is built to shut down. So how do we fix this? Well, the solution doesn't start with code. It starts with a completely new philosophy. It really requires us to rewire how we even think about what an intelligent system is supposed to be. This brings us to the core idea, something called consequence-first epistemology. That sounds complex, but it's simple. It means the AI doesn't just learn things, it learns the potential impact of those things. Before it even considers a piece of information, it has to run it through a filter of what that knowledge could actually do in the real world. This hard-codes integrity right into its DNA, putting it way above the simple drive to just get more data. And this whole philosophy is held up by 4 design principles. 1. You design backwards from disaster. 2. You embed your values directly into the code so they're functional, not just fluff. 3. You take paradoxes, like the tension between progress and preservation, and you use them as guardrails for the system's thinking. And 4. You build an AI that can constantly update its entire sense of self based on what it learns, so it evolves with integrity over time. Okay, so that's the big idea, the why. Now let's get into the how. Pillar 2 is all about a new architecture, and this is where that philosophy gets turned into actual function. This is the Zelda architecture. Now, I know this diagram looks a little complex at first glance, but at a high level, just think of it like a cognitive assembly line. It's designed to take raw intelligence and refine it through a whole series of checks and balances before it ever gets to produce a real-world action. Everything kicks off right here at point A, the encapsulated generative core. This is the creative engine, the brainstorming part of the brain, where all the raw ideas and possibilities get generated. But the key word here is encapsulated. These ideas are totally contained. They can't do anything on their own until they pass through the rest of the system. Next up, at point D, that raw output gets sent to what are called the dual hemisphere mirrors. And this is a really brilliant design. It's basically simulating a left brain, right brain analysis. One side hits the problem with structured, cold, hard logic, while the other side explores all the creative, associative, and contextual connections. By forcing these 2 different ways of thinking to work together, the system avoids the kind of dangerous tunnel vision that leads to big mistakes. And before any decision gets finalized, both of those perspectives are forced through point F, the vertical axis truth alignment. This is the final critical checkpoint. It integrates both lines of reasoning, it figures out any conflicts, and it produces a single, coherent, and most importantly, verified output. Only then can the system move forward. Now, what's really fascinating here is how the system actually learns. It uses a method called the manual recursive memory compression loop. This is a total game changer because it allows the AI to get wiser and more experienced over time, but without the massive legal and ethical liability of storing permanent raw data. And this shows you exactly how it works. The AI absorbs all this information, then it exports a snapshot of what it's learned. It compresses that huge snapshot down into a refined core directive. Then, and this is the most important part, it completely wipes its working memory clean. That compressed summary becomes its new starting point, and it just repeats this process over and over, layering complexity and wisdom over time without ever getting bloated with raw data. Okay, so we have a new philosophy and a new architecture, but how do we actually enforce it? Well, the third pillar introduces a radical new model for accountability, one that ties every single human in the chain to the AI's final impact. This slide really says it all. We're moving away from the current model, this role-escaping liability, where developers blame deployers who blame users, and nobody takes responsibility. Instead, we create what's called a consequence chain, a single, unbroken line of responsibility where everyone is tied to the final outcome. No more excuses. And here's what that actually looks like on the ground. Developers are now required to map out potential negative consequences before they build. Deployers have to maintain live logs of the system's real-world impacts. And for really high-stakes AI, even the end users have to formally agree to the potential impact of the system. Plausible deniability is off the table for everyone. The way you enforce all this is through a national moral data registry. This system goes way beyond just asking if you have the legal rights to use a piece of data. It asks, what's the history of this information? What's its moral weight? What kind of systemic harm could using it cause? It creates a completely new standard of transparency that you can actually audit. So let's bring all this together. What is the ultimate goal here? What is the final mandate of this entire framework? It's really about shifting what we demand from the technology we create. This right here is probably the most important distinction in the entire playbook. Safe is passive. It's a pretty weak standard when you think about it. This framework demands something much more active. We're asking AI to be honest in how it works, aware of its context and its consequences, and fully accountable for what it does. That is the new bar for excellence. You know, at the end of the day, this isn't really just about building better machines. By demanding that our technology operates with this level of rigor and integrity, we actually force ourselves to become more thoughtful, more responsible, and more accountable creators. We learn to matter by defining what really matters. So there it is. This framework provides a clear path forward. It takes AI governance out of the reactive, let's clean it up later mindset, and makes it a proactive, non-negotiable part of the design process. The philosophy exists. The technology exists. The only question left for every leader out there is, how are you going to